Hello everyone, it's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. So I want to talk about Hurricane Harvey. Look, my heart goes out to the people who are engaged or involved in it. And there's been a lot of destruction, and there have been a lot of people who have passed. This is New York Times. At least 39 people have died, including Houston officer, a family trapped in a van beneath surging floodwater, and a mother whose shivering 3-year-old was found clinging to her unresponsive body. Survivors face hurdles of their own, with help likely to be slow in coming. Managing the shelters that are housing tens of thousands of them remains the biggest battle that we have right now. It's not just the hurricane. Yes, you have people who died, but it's also the people who've been displaced. Look, it's not easy. There are 2 points, or 3 points. The first point, stop with the conspiracy theory stuff. It's not weather wars. The government didn't create some kind of weather device and is attacking the country. That is mental. That is mental. No, I can't prove that there are no weather wars, but what's more likely? We have a storm or manufactured. I think it's more likely we just had a hurricane. Hurricanes happen. The second part, the United States makes up 5% of the world's population. There are other places around the world that have been hit worse. Nobody has said anything about. And me mentioning those other places in no way detracts from the people in this country who are suffering and struggling. But my last 2 points need to bring this up. It's important to bring it up. South Asia floods. Mumbai building collapses as monsoon rains wreaks havoc. Flooding across India, Nepal, and Bangladesh leave parts of the city underwater as storm moves onto Pakistan. This is The Guardian. At least 21 people are dead and more than a dozen are trapped after a monsoon downpours caused the building to collapse in Mumbai. The fourth story, actually, what I want to get to is this part. Across the region, more than 1,200 people are feared to have died, and more than 40 million are estimated to be affected by flooding in India, Nepal, and Bangladesh. 40 million people, that's amazing. Vast swaths of land are underwater in the eastern part of the Indian state of Uttar Pradesh, where more than 100 people have been reported dead. 3,097 villages are submerged, and almost 3 million villagers have been affected by flooding, according to officials. Army personnel have joined rescuers to evacuate people from the area. Another one, Sierra Leone. Sierra Leone mudslide. President calls for urgent help as search continues. A national emergency has been declared after the city suffered flooding, thought to be worst in Africa over the past 2 decades. Freetown's manager, Sam Gitson, said 270 corpses have been recovered and we're being prepared for burial. While the chief coroner at Reuters, nearly 400 bodies have been found. Estimates of the number missing vary. The Red Cross reported 600 people have not been traced, while the country's interior minister said thousands are unaccounted for. It's Nigeria. More than 100,000 is placed in flooding in central Nigeria. Nigeria's president said more than 100,000 people have been displaced by flooding in the central part of the country. It's not immediately known whether anyone has died in the flooding of the Benue state. Oh, I'm not going to butcher that man's name. President Buhari said emergency response teams are being sent to the areas where more than 2,800 households have been displaced. I mention this, again, not to diminish what the people are going through in Harvey. It's not that. I want us to have somewhat of a wider perspective, that's all. Those countries that are mentioned are economically weaker than the United States. Those countries did not in any way set world order. I read the report yesterday showing the Department of Defense being concerned that the United States is losing its primacy, its ability to essentially tell every other country what to do and to move the countries around. Meaning, whatever America does, everyone else conforms to us. That article made the point that that's not true anymore, or at the very least not true to the degree it was after World War II. Well, with the collapse of the Soviet Union. What I'm getting at here is this issue of climate change juxtaposed against this idea of world order. How we're arranged around the world. You can make a case that says, in this ideological struggle between capitalism and communism, this idea of free markets dictating human society, the country saying, hey, buy more stuff that makes you more American. The more stuff you buy, the more stuff you consume, it makes you more American. It makes you fight the Ruskies. Red menace. We can fight them off by buying stuff. But that was the thought. Now, both of these countries were engaged in a certain amount of propaganda, meaning the United States, capitalist, home of the free, all this other stuff. Soviet Union being, we're taking care of our citizens. So they wanted to give this impression of communism as being softer, kinder. Well, it wasn't. At least not in the way that it was being used by the Russian government or Soviet Union. But neither was capitalism. Certainly you understand that someone living on the street is a violent act by society, or at the very least a betrayal by the society that the person was raised in. The world order that was set after World War II is, for the most part, based on this idea of markets. Markets is somewhat of a subordinate reality. It in no way pays attention to the wider reality of ecology. Now, going all the way back to the 60s, I believe, scientists were talking about climate change. When the oil company, I think it was Exxon, commissioned for a study, and they came back and said, yes, the events that you're seeing are going to get worse. You're going to get hurricanes. You're going to get droughts. You're going to get these effects based upon the thing that you yourself are doing in the world that we live in. Meaning your very basis, your monitor, your way you're paid, in a sense, or the reason you're paid, getting energy out of the ground and burning that energy into the sky. How you're paid, your whole business model destroys the planet. Put that in perspective. The entire business model destroys the planet. This is not even getting into the agriculture industry, meaning animal agriculture. Half of global warming is animal agriculture. That's amazing. Our very basis of being in Western society is the thing that's undermining the country, the ecology of the world. We make up 5% of the world. That's it. That's it. In making up 5% of the world, the amount of resources we use, the amount of energy we squander. Again, we set the world order. Now, these countries are being punished to some degree. Nigeria, Sierra Leone, India had no hand at all in setting the world order, but they are experiencing, again, the flooding, the hurricanes. These things are predicted and these things are expected. Now, here the problem is, it's not like you can point to one thing and say, okay, that's global warming. It doesn't work that way. It does predict increased severity of hurricanes, increased severity of droughts. The weather phenomena that we're seeing, yes, we may have hurricanes, yes, we may have tornadoes, but yes, it gets worse based on our own behavior and based on the things that we do. Now, we can convert our energy market. We can change those things overnight. It would make good sense to change those things overnight. Your world is at stake. The scientists on your planet, the people who you go to for information, who's looking and analyzing physical matter reality. This is not a new agey thing. This is physical matter reality. Scientists are good at understanding physical matter reality. We can get into conversations about reality, meaning this kind of fabric of reality, this idea of soul, spirit. All that stuff is good. But this very specific point, we're talking about physical matter reality. You go to those guys when you need something to blow up. You go to those guys to help you understand your world. In this very specific case, they're telling you that your world is being set ablaze by the things that you're doing. That's inconvenient for me. That adversely affects my profits. I've already created all this infrastructure. We're getting billions of dollars a year. So no, we don't want to change it to something else. You are a human being. That's a real thing. You as a human being have certain needs in order to persist yourself. That is also a real thing. If you do not have those real things, food, clothing, shelter, the sense of being, the sense of belonging, the sense of wanting to be self-actualized. When that person doesn't have those things, they suffer. As a society itself, the society itself will suffer, particularly when you have a lot of people not getting their needs met. In this case, one of the things that people need is a world to be on. If the world that they themselves are on are being despoiled and undermined based on their behavior, they themselves will be destroyed and undermined. It's like anything else. Nothing persists on its own. If you had a flower, that flower doesn't just grow left to its own devices. It needs certain things. I'm saying as human beings, you need certain things to persist. Your world is one of them. Your world is the main one. That's a real thing. Your market pretending that that world is not real, or that your needs are not real, or that you as a person is somehow subordinate to this thing that in and of itself is not real. The unreal thing telling the other thing that is real that its needs don't matter. I'm trying to just make this very particular point that the market system is not a real thing. It's a contrivance. It's something we ourselves have created. It's a game space. We allowed ourselves to become subordinate to the creation because there were some people out there with a huge amount of means who can control the apparatus if everyone buys in to a model. This model is destroying the planet. Those people in those countries did not have anything to do with setting the arrangement of the world the way we have it now. Those people are often impoverished in those countries. Again, 60% of the world makes like $10 a day, or goes by $10 a day, something to that effect. It's some astonishing number in regards to how much people live off. They don't have the resources that we have in this particular country to protect or insulate themselves. They're going to be destroyed. And yes, that's grand and overdramatic, and maybe that's too much of an overstatement, but I'm just saying those regions of the world are going to be hit harder and harder by things that they themselves will have difficulty compensating for. The market system requires them to have resources in order to get those things to insulate themselves. In this country, we're somewhat insulated. They are not. They're impoverished. The governments may not necessarily have the resources to go out and actually help the people who need it. Part and parcel to the increasing of the intensity of these things, it's human behavior. It's human behavior. And even though we only make up 5% of the world, other parts of the world are going to be adversely affected from our choices and our decisions and the things that we ourselves do. And look, it's not just us. I mean, at this point, you're talking about China, you're talking about Europe and everything else. But I'm making this point that the world order that we ourselves are living by is destroying our world. Those countries are going to feel it a hell of a lot more than we're going to feel it. But it will get here. It will get here. It will reach a point where we ourselves cannot necessarily compensate. All because of cash. All because of cash. And yes, I blame cash. I blame the profit motive on this. Because the profit motive tells people, in this space, in this matrix that we've created, you will be compensated for certain things. Well, the certain things that they're being compensated for is destroying the world. The matrix is subordinate to the world itself. It's just, it's maddening to me that in every other context, science is amazing. People go to scientists, hey, help me out, explain this to me. How do I do this? What is this? These are the high priests of our time. We look to these guys to explain our world. on this. It's inconvenient. And because it's inconvenient, we pretend as if it's not happening, even though they're saying, hey, this is getting worse. The temperatures around the world are getting higher. The weather events are getting worse. I leave it at that, man. I don't want to belabor the point. It's just what we ourselves are doing are literally undermining the entire world. Scientists are saying, hey, you're destroying the planet. In every other context, we pay attention to these guys, but in this one, yeah, man, you're telling us information that's either too gloomy to process or too inconvenient to do anything about. And in both cases, we would find politicians to assuage us by giving tepid changes. We'd put our cans in a recycling bin as if that somehow is going to stave off the night. That's not going to stave off the night. Winter is coming. Winter is coming. Yeah, man, winter's coming. We have a bill that's coming due. You can have any arrangement of society you want. You just have to deal with the consequences. This is one of the consequences. Essentially, the world ending. Alright, guys, I'll leave it at that. If you enjoy the content, feel free to share, rate, subscribe, and of course, you can always support the work through Patreon. Thank you.